You're listening to the Whole Church Podcast, a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. Our efforts to educate and unite the church are made possible thanks to our sponsors on Patreon, Captivate, and Apple Podcast. You could join them on one of those networks, or you can support the show by making a one-time tip on our Captivate website down below in the show's description. Hey guys, real quick, before the episode, I just wanted to let you know that we had some problems with some of the audio in this recording with Officer Lofton. There was just some technical issues. I just want to ask you all to stick through with it. I do think it's worth it, as the officer shares in our God Moment segment that he actually had prayed for an opportunity to share more about his own faith and stuff like that the day that we invited him on to the show. So I just want you all to try to be respectful. We had to cut some segments, so maybe some of it will seem a little bit chopped up and not as coherent as usual, but we do think it's worth taking your time, listening to what he has to say. It's some amazing content for what's there. And again, you know, he prayed for this, and I do think that what he had to share is important for people to listen to. So please take the time. We really appreciate you all. Thank you again for listening and for sticking with it when we have some technical issues like this. All right. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Server, you remind us of our Savior's bull and towel. Teacher, you are raising up a child to be kind. Lawyer, give us hope that justice one day will surround us. May God's kingdom come, on earth his will be done.
Therefore, putting away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor, because we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. Let the thief no longer steal. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands, so that he has something to share with anyone in need. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. In the book of Ephesians, St. Paul is kind of describing what it means to be the church. Before this pericope, Paul wrote that the church is to work together in all our different roles. So here St. Paul insists that the church builds one another up in word and deeds, and he even ties in this idea of occupational work to that theme. Officer Thurman Lofton, how do you think the way that we, the church, present ourselves in work can tie into this idea of building one another up?
I love that verse that you read. It's funny that you read that, because I was just reading it on last week and thinking about how my occupation as a police officer, how it affects the community. You have to be sensitive to the needs of the people. Some people that, you never know what they're going through, and you have to listen to the voice of God when you're dealing with people and speak to them where they are. And I've learned that over the past 13 years, being in different agencies, that you have to be led by the Lord when you're dealing with people, because you never know what they're going through. And you have to be available to be used as a vessel of God to speak life. And that's what that verse means to me, because sometimes, for example, sometimes a traffic stop, for example, you don't know what that person's going through. And yes, you have a job to do, but when you're sensitive to the voice of God, God will speak through you to that person to encourage them. And I found that many times that instead of like a traffic ticket, instead of giving them a traffic ticket, just give them a warning and feel God urging me to tell that person that whatever you're going through, everything's going to be all right. And these are people that I never even met before. So that's what that verse means to me. the role of the church is important to the community because the church is the life of the community. You look at the standards or ethics that people have is far away from the biblical standards which we all grew up on. The love of respect and for each other and caring for one another. And it's that verse just means a lot and has really been useful in my life. Just being sensitive to what people are going through.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Man, yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Be close to us, Lord, have mercy on us, Lord, please put your hands on us day by day.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Whole Church Podcast with the Whole Church Job Fair. We're talking to people about how their faith impacts their life, their daily life, and their occupational work. We're having a lot of fun with this series, and I'm really excited. Today we're talking with the one and only Officer Thurman Lofton, working with the South Carolina Police. We're going to have a fun time talking about his occupation, what he does, and how all this stuff plays a part in his life. Before we do, I also have to introduce, of course, the co-host with the co-most, the reason for the season, no matter what the season is, actually. TJ, Tiberius on Blackwell, how's it going?
Oh, good.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this, then you should probably also check out our website, the Onzal Podcast Network. The link is below for that, for shows that are like ours, or at least affiliated at the very least. And if you want to support the show and, you don't really like to think about what you're putting on, you just want everything to look good, then we have merch you can buy that'll fill that purpose perfectly. So check that out.
Yeah. Good stuff. And also, one thing we like to start our show off with every time, it's something sacred around here, silliness. So we always like to start our show off with just a silly question. And this time we got something kind of unique for the series, because when we asked our Facebook group about like the biggest theological questions that's happening in their churches that they want to know whether or not it's relevant to their lives, our good friend Samantha Perez put up there like, hey, what if we wonder about, is a hot dog a sandwich? And for some reason, everybody was like, yeah, let's vote for that. So we had to include it somewhere. So we're including it here for our silly segment. Officer Thurman, TJ's already answered. I'm going to answer at the end of this series. We need your wisdom right now. Would you say that a hot dog is a sandwich?
That's a good neutral answer.
Yeah, that's
a
accurate.
good neutral answer.
And it's true,
Yeah,
Me
it's a
neither.
thinker.
Never thought I'd have to think about it this much, honestly. Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah. So Thurman, do you think there could be a way for this question to be relevant in your day-to-day life? I agree.
Yeah, see, that's also accurate, yeah. Man, see, I'm just surprised by how everyone has so successfully made this a relevant question. And I don't know why I ever doubt Samantha. That's my problem. But anyway, so the reason we're doing this series specifically, for anyone who maybe this is their first time jumping into the series, is because a lot of our listeners are pastors, they're theologians, or church leaders of some sort. And we believe our church leaders could benefit from hearing more and learning from people who are in different occupations, who see the world differently than they do, different perspectives, all that kind of stuff. So that's why we're doing this. And we're really thankful to have people like Officer Thurman join us to, I don't do a lot of talking beforehand, so I really don't know what he's going to say. And I've been learning a lot throughout the series from people. And I'm like, yeah, I literally would have never thought of that. So I'm excited to hear this one. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that we found that helps with Christian unity is to hear one another's stories. So before we get into it, Thurman, could you briefly share with us your history with the faith and how you got plugged into the church you're at now?
My father, well, of course, he passed in 2012, but I'm what you call a PK kid. My father was a pastor of Southern Baptist Church. So growing up with, and I'm thankful for that because it instilled the word of God in me, even though sometimes, as a kid, I wasn't really paying attention in church. But I didn't think that I was. But it has helped my life because no matter where I go in life, I always have that with me. Because I served 22 years in the Marines, 3 combat tours, and then law enforcement, and went right into law enforcement. And God has always been there with me each and every step, even though I feel that I wasn't always there where I felt that I should be. So faith to me is very important. It has gotten me through a lot of things in my life as so many people. And it's something that I'm always learning about.
Yeah. So this is the whole church job fair. And before we get into, the fair part, we're going to talk about the job part. If someone had somehow never heard of your job, never heard of a police officer, how would you describe it, and how would you address anyone who might be interested in becoming a police officer?
Well, it is a job that changed over the years. I know from when I was younger, we had a lot of police officers that went to my father's church, and those guys, I always saw them doing something in the community, and I was very impressed with what they did. I think the funny part was that they knew my father, who's the pastor, so I couldn't get away with anything. Being a teenager, it was always, I know where your father works. I'm going to tell him as soon as I see him. It kind of deterred me from hanging out with the wrong crowd. But being a police officer is, if you look at it the right way, it's a very humble profession. Yes, you are upholding the laws of the state of South Carolina or whatever state that you're in, but you're a public servant. You're serving people, and you are protecting people who cannot protect themselves. Over the years, it's gotten a little bit tougher, but when someone asks me, I always tell them that somebody has to do the job. Somebody has to do it.
So you mentioned that it's gotten tougher over the years. I know earlier you're already kind of talking about how your faith plays a part. Could you maybe speak a little bit more to what are some of the difficulties with it that's been coming up, and how does your faith help you through that?
You have social media, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. I know that sounds controversial, but it's not. The respect I think the change comes when the respect people have for each other has changed. So the respect for the law has changed as well. But you have, in every profession, it's just that law enforcement is highlighted because you're a public servant. That you have some are good officers, and then you have some that are bad. And it makes it sometimes hard for the officers that genuinely care for people and are trying to serve the public to do their jobs, when you have these examples of, this police officer, you see it in the news all the time or whatever, where this police officer did this, and we kind of get grouped, and I say we officers, we kind of get grouped all in the same batch when it comes to, this officer did this, so all of you guys are like that. Not necessarily true, because there's some officers that are believers, they're Christians, and they are doing the best can at the job that we do. But to answer that, how it's changed, I remember being a kid, and there was so much respect for police officers because they were in communities. They were that example of a public servant. And things have just changed so much over the years with how people see each other and how they see law enforcement in general because some of the bad things that have happened. But I will say that as a recruitment, that all police officers are not bad.
Yeah.
All police officers are not bad. You have good people, you got bad people. Sometimes people, they make it through whatever academy, and they're. I tell my kids, if you stick around somebody long enough, they'll show you who they are. They make it through school, and if that's in them, it's going to come out. It's going to come out sooner or later.
Yeah.
So it's become challenging. It's challenging when you're always trying to do the right thing. However, you're being a believer, it encourages you to not give up. Because if you can just reach every day, my goal is if I can just reach one person during the tour of my duty, say something encouraging to one person, smile, or one person, I think I've done what I've done my job because it makes a difference.
Yeah. I've heard some people say that it's kind of like the academy is sort of like, the Marine Corps or any other branch, where if you have a good person go through and come out the other side, they're still probably going to be a good person. If you have a bad person go through and make it through, they're still going to be a bad person when they get out.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it kind of makes me think, just probably because I'm closer to it, of a lot of what's happened with some of your ministers. It's a lot harder to be a pastor these days too, because there are these things that have come out about some of your big, well-known pastors who have been accused of things that have come out. You see certain stats and stuff, reports that were done for the Southern Baptist Convention Committee. I don't remember what the C stands for, but there's a similar report happened with Christianity Today. Even a group closer to us that we're not associated with, but the New Evangelicals, they've been part of the same events as us. And like 2 days ago of this recording, a report was released on them of different things. And it's like, wow, it seems overwhelming. But when you think about it, those are like a small number, but that's just what everybody hears about. And then when you watch TV, ministers usually, turns out he was secretly a bad guy. And I think the same thing happens with the police officers. Like it's, people try to act like it's a huge stat, but when you look at it, they're combining all these other stats to make one number. And you're like, well, a lot of the times the people who are abusive at home are the same officers that are abusive at the workplace. Like you can't add those numbers. Like that's not how it works. But people just use these cases and try to say, oh, well, everybody's bad. And it's like, that's not what's happening. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that are normal for you as an officer that other people might not often think about? Like, in restaurants, we have back in house, front of the house, get at it to each other, that kind of thing. Day shift, night shift. What's that like for you? What's the differences that we don't think about?
Day shift and night shift are sometimes you deal with the different sets of people. Mostly everybody's at home during the nighttime. That's when a lot of arguments that escalate to the level of needing law enforcement intervention. Some of the things that, one specific thing is most of the times if we just disconnect, if it's an argument or something going on, law enforcement has to be involved. And think about, is this really that serious? Another example, we have here in South Carolina, everyone likes to drive aggressively. And is it really that serious? You're going to hit a stoplight. I always joke with people, hey, you're going to hit a stoplight sooner or later, so what's the hurry? But The aggressive driving, for example, is one of the biggest things. I know we all see it. People cut you off. They don't use the turn signal, merge into your lane. They show some obscene gestures or whatever. If we just disengage just for a moment, is it really that serious? No, it's not. But it helps when you have God in your life to kind of steer you away from that, kind of destructive behavior, I guess. That's one of the biggest thing. One of the biggest things I would say is that if we learn to just disengage, if it's negative, if it's something negative, if we just learn to disengage for a moment, give us some time to think, is it really that serious?
Yeah, man, good stuff. So one of the other things we're asking everybody, so I work in a restaurant because that's how we met. You would occasionally go to the Chipotle that I work at, and in the restaurant we have like our own little language, right, in the kitchen. Thank you. But it's like herd, sharp, hot pot. Like these are the kind of things you say in a kitchen. But if you're at your home and you say those things, you're weird. Like you don't talk like that at home. Are there any things like as an officer that's like, what's the lingo? Like what's some of the words that y'all say that maybe we wouldn't be up to date on the lingo of police officers?
Well, what I've learned in different agencies, I've been with the city, county, highway patrol. Each agency has different things. Like one most common one would be, watch your six, which basically, watch your back. Because if someone's standing behind you and you're unaware of what that person's intentions are, but another officer may come up the back and back you up, and they see something that you don't. It may say something like, watch your six or watch your back or something like that to kind of alert you that, hey, this, but the most common one that I've got used over the years is if I'm on the interstate as a trooper, six, okay, I didn't notice that person that was not really combative at the time, now they're getting worked up while I'm dealing with this other situation.
Yeah.
Do y'all still say 10-4? Do y'all still say 10-4? Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's the one for me. Yeah, my dad's been saying 10-4 his whole life. I've been saying 10-4 his whole life. I didn't know that wasn't for normal people.
I've heard that one a lot. I don't really know what 10-4 means other than like, yeah, heard you, but like, why is it 10-4? Anybody know? Okay.
Sometimes you'll see the officers, if they're on a traffic stop and another officer passes by, you see them getting, thumbs up, which is basically saying, I'm 10-4, I'm good.
Yeah, that's the big one for me. Yeah. Been hearing that my whole life. But the meat of these episodes, the big part, is we want to walk through 12 big theological topics that get debated a lot between theologians and podcasters and pastors to see how these ideas actually impact people's everyday lives. So we're going to run through these 12 topics that our Facebook group voted on as our biggest theological hot topics of our time. And like it's multiple choice, we just need you to tell us if you find each topic somewhat relevant, not relevant, very relevant, or you've never heard of it, which is a perfectly fine answer. That's the whole point of this series. So when we're done, we're going to pick a couple of these to talk about more in depth. But for now, we're just going to go through the list. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, soteriology.
Never heard of it.
Me neither. Not until recently. But free will versus predestination.
Heard of it.
Yeah, is it relevant?
I'm not sure because it's. I'm not sure because I haven't really done a lot of research into that.
Not sure it's a great answer. Not sure it's a great answer.
It's not really. Yeah, not sure.
Yeah. And what about atonement models?
That I haven't heard of.
Right. what about continuationism versus cessationism about the gifts of the Spirit? All right. And what about Christology? Yeah. Is it relevant to your job, to day to day?
Yes.
All right. And
yes.
And
I believe
what about God's nature?
heard of it, and it is very important to my day-to-day life. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's a challenge.
What about social justice?
Heard of it, but there's so many variations to it. I'd like to know how it relates to what Bible thinks of it, because everyone has their own interpretation or opinion about it.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Let's do
we
that.
can go more in depth to that one. Copper agrees. What about the doctrine of Imago Dei?
That I've heard of.
And what about the nature of Scripture? All right. And ecclesiology and missiology, which is what it means to be the church and how we approach outreach.
Heard of it, but I read a little bit about ecclesiology and its methods for teaching, but it's been so long. I can't remember in detail.
Right.
About
Does it feel relevant to your day to day as a police officer? Right. Yeah, that's fair. And demonology and angelology.
Heard of it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that one's not really relevant for most people. Most people's jobs don't have a lot to do with demons or angels, but
I hope not.
Unless they're specifically Constantine. Unless they're specifically Constantine. In the DC comics, That's the only one.
Yeah.
So, and our last one is eschatology, which is the study of end times.
Is it relevant? Day-to-day life about study of times? Yes, because I have to prepare myself for after this life is over.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially in South Carolina, where we, when it snows, the grocery stores get a little rambunctious.
Yeah.
It could come up a little bit more.
Yeah. I worked in a grocery store for a long time. Several grocery stores. That's snowing in the Carolinas, not good. Especially if you're in dairy, it's extra not good. But Officer Thurman, if you had to pick one of those above topics that we just mentioned to talk a little bit more about, which one would you like to talk a little bit more about? All right, I'm here for it. So what about the end times, would you say makes it relevant to your life? I mean, you mentioned preparing, but what else?
I definitely experienced that. Growing up in Baptist church, old Southern Baptist church, the old fire and brimstone messages on Sundays. But we're talking about the end times messages that you used to hear. I remember Graham messages, and they were very good pastor. I loved a lot of his messages. I still listen to a lot of his messages about the end times, and you don't really hear that type of preaching like you used to.
Yeah. I feel like most churches kind of started leaning away from, oh, you're all going to hell for some reason, I don't know why they did that, but you wanted to talk about eschatology. Why would you say eschatology is more relevant to you than, cessationism or soteriology?
Eschatology is eschatology. I'm trying to think. It's the study of
the end times. Yeah,
it's relevant to me because it guides my day to day, the way that I live my life. Because you never know. We don't know. We don't know. We could be here today and gone today, or here today and gone tomorrow. And most people don't think like that. That the next 2 minutes, it could be it. And when you live your life and you understand that, and I think it's one of the things I learned as I get older, is that, life is short. And learning about the end times, you have to prepare yourself for what's going to happen after this life is over.
Mm-hmm.
But as I look around, most people they live their life like they're going to live forever. But we know that's not true.
Mm.
But it not bothers me, but it touches my heart when you see people that are homeless, people that are strung out on drugs. As an officer, we see it more. But every time I see it, because I'm conscious of this life is short. So I'm always interested, you just see how what the Bible speaks of. You see it just happening more and more.
Yeah, the end times it's an interesting one. Especially, I was actually having a debate with one of our other friends on our podcast network earlier because we have different views on certain things in the end times. And I feel like how we have these, since it's a Church Unity podcast, I feel like it's relevant. How we have these conversations can either be a point of disagreement that like causes you to split apart, or it can be a way for you to find what really matters. So when we talk about the end times, you're thinking of those things that are ultimate. So instead of just always arguing, like, oh, well, I disagree with you, here's what, throwing verses back and forth, sometimes what we're able to do is find like, okay, hey, we might disagree on some of these end outcome things, but we both agree that like the name of Jesus, like Jesus is what gets you saved. So that's important. So, hey, if we agree with that, let's build from there. So I think thinking of the end times makes us go back to like those basic things that we really do need. And even more than that, we talked to Aaron Simmons on the podcast earlier this year. Regardless of what you believe about the end times, what we do know is that our life is finite. Like you said, like we have a certain amount of time that we've been given on this earth. And when you look at it, do you want to say like, hey, are you okay with how you're spending your finitude, your limited time on the earth? I think that's an important question. So yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you. So one of the other things we're asking everybody with this series, because, we say everyone sees the world through different eyes, different perspectives. Me serving up customers food, I see one part of their life. And then, when you pull them over for a traffic ticket, you're seeing a whole different part of the same person's life, right? And since we all do see the world differently, we wanted to ask, is there anything that you see in your work that you think our pastors, church leaders, and theologians might benefit from seeing for themselves or learning more about?
Can you hear us, Thurman?
Should I repeat the question? Okay, you're fine. I'll just repeat the question. But yeah, so one thing we're doing for this series, we know everyone sees the world through. I'm sorry? Can you hear us now, Thurman? Hello. So we believe everyone sees the world through different eyes. I see a different perspective in the restaurant. You see a different perspective of the world when you're patrolling. Our pastors see different perspectives from the pulpit. Do you think there's anything in your work that you see that you think pastors, church leaders, theologians might benefit from seeing for themselves or learning more about?
No, not really, because the church is for me as an officer, the church is where I would point people to if they need help. If I can't help them out of my own pocket, then the church is where I would point them to. And as several churches, they have different programs and things that they do. So, no, I think the pastors are on point with what they're doing.
Yeah, right. So are there questions that you think we might have missed to ask an officer that the people would want to know about you or your work?
Sure. Most people would ask, how do I get out of a ticket? Don't speed.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
That's just funny.
No, but the question that you asked about, because law enforcement, we need good people. You're not going to get rich financially in that field, but people are not sure how they can become an officer. All they have to do is just apply to any agency, and every agency has their own steps that person for criminal background check, interviewing, and should for a job. I would encourage people to, as we there, that when you see, an officer on the side of the road or talking with the person that you pray for, because 99% of the time those guys and gals, they have families just like we do. They have children that they want to go home to, and they volunteered to do a job that nobody wants to do. But it is a job that is most criticized, but nobody wants to. A lot of people don't want to do the job. So I would encourage the church and the people, when you see them, just say a prayer, because the officers, they see things that people don't normally see, and then they have to see these things over and over. An accident or something, or a family member that's deceased at the scene of an accident, or someone injured severely, and that's something that they have to live with. For the job, yes, but that's something that they have to live with every day, and then they have to be prepared the next day, no matter what happened yesterday, to put it on, to put the uniform back on and go right back out there and serve the public. And you see people at their worst most of the times. And you just imagine seeing this over and over and over, but you still got to do it.
I'm going to add a couple things, if that's okay, TJ. One, I'm gonna go back to a thought we had earlier about how people misinterpret numbers, and they're like, oh, well, because this little group bad, the whole thing's bad when it comes to ministers and police officers. I think the same thing happens with politicians too, honestly. I think a lot of people go, well, we know one or two people that are really bad on both sides, so the whole side is just terrible. And, we're not even picking partisans here. I'm just saying that's a thing that we do, right? We find somebody and say everybody's like that. And then the thing that we do as a people, myself and people like me, we're oh, well, I wouldn't want to be a police officer because I know that people who are police officers are, XYZ, you do this generalization, right? Or I wouldn't want to be a pastor because I know pastors are like this, or I don't want to be a politician because politicians are, but as long as the good people think that only bad people do it and good people don't do the jobs, then bad people are going to be the ones who fill the jobs, right? I think we have to overcome that. If you want good people in those positions, maybe you're the one who should be in the position. So I think that's something we all need to think about. And I think it's a big calling for any of those. Another one, I just want to share a couple quick stories of how police officers have helped me, because I love our officers, and I think a lot of the more progressive people that I tend to be friends with sometimes are oh, officers. And I'm no, it's not like that. One time I had a fender bender on a highway. The lady hit me and we stopped, and when you're a weirdo like I am, just weird things happen all the time. And I started talking to this lady, and it turned out her son had been terribly injured, is going through, her bad head injuries. I'm trying to think of the word. TJ, what's that kind of pain that I have? That's it's not eternal pain. What's it called? Lasting pain? Chronic pain. There we go. He had the same kind of thing, and it's making him question God and all this stuff. And I talked to her, and I was like, hey, I got a book for him the C.S. Lewis wrote that I'm going to annotate. And I annotated an entire book, sent it to him, became pen pals with this guy. And while I'm talking to her, I'm getting ready to pray. The police officer comes up to get all the information, sort everything out, and I just couldn't tell him what's going on. And he's like, hey, yeah, let's pray. So me, this police officer, the lady who hit me, just had this prayer session on the side of the highway. And for me, that was one of those beautiful moments that always sat with me. I love that. Another one for me, last year, my dog got shot. My wife's a bullet grazed her arm. The officer the first officer that showed up on the scene, he still shows up. Every now and then he comes to our house. He went to our old house. He's drove by where we are now to just see how coppers, because he's amazed that the dog's still alive. So when Officer Thurman's talking about how they carry these things with them, yeah, I see it. And for some people, for the good people, they carry it with them, and they want to know that people are okay. And that's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful job that some people take that burden of. Well, Officer Thurman, one thing we like to do at the end of every episode before our wrap-ups and all the other stuff that we do, We usually like to ask everybody if they could suggest a practical action to engender church unity, what it would be. But specifically for this series, we wanted to know if you could tell us more about what the church, whether it be laity or their ministers, what could the church do to better help our police officers in their daily lives? Just what are ways we can be better for you guys?
Prayer is number one. I would say prayer, because, that's somebody's son, that's somebody's daughter out there doing the job for 12 hours or however many hours they're working.
Yeah.
I would ask be in continued prayer for that. That's somebody's son, daughter, brother, sister that's out there. Sometimes find themselves out there alone, trying to do a job. And prayer is the key. It's the biggest thing that we need.
Yeah, I said stop breaking the law.
That also probably is helpful for police officers.
But yeah, I don't know if that would help you or just make you unemployed. So maybe break fewer laws, but
break mostly inconsequential laws, barely go over the speed limit. Yeah. Yeah, that way they still have something to do, but you're not like endangering anybody.
No reckless driving, but
that way they need work. That's just yeah.
So before we wrap up, we like to ask everyone to share a moment where they saw God recently, whether it be in the form of a blessing or a challenge, a moment of worship. I always make Josh go first so that the rest of us can have some time to think about what our God moment's going to be.
Mine even has to do with my occupation. I'm staying on brand today. I have, for some reason, I thought I'll tell you the reason. It's mostly selfish, which is not how you're supposed to do Lent. But, I'm Lutheran, so I'm supposed to be doing Lent now. I didn't do it last year because I was like, too much energy. This year I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And specifically, I'm going to give up energy drinks. That's what I decided to do for Lent because it already costs a lot of money. And I was like, I need to save money anyway. It's a double advantage. And, the whole purpose of Lent is like chosen suffering. So I meditate on things of Christ and all that kind of stuff. I listen to a lot of My Seminary Life, Brandon Knight, one of the shows on our thing. He talks a lot about it. And, Will Rose is my pastor. So I listen to his sermons on YouTube. And he's talking about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. Then yesterday, my night manager called out. General manager's out of state. Field leader's out of state. It's just me. I have no choice but to work a 17-hour shift. And I've given up energy drinks for Lent. And I'm like, this stinks. But I remembered the words of my pastor and the words of my friend Brandon talking about how this is a chosen suffering. And it's supposed to remind me of Christ. And I'm like, man, being really tired really does not compare. And it just kind of reminds me of how much the stuff that I find to be suffering is so trivial. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, it sucked, but it really, I don't know, it's challenged me. And I can now see the benefit of Lent. I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah. So for me, my God moment, I just recently had a small vacation, which for me means I had one extra day off. And, I met some friends in Nashville, some friends that live in Illinois and Wisconsin. We all met in Nashville. And it was so fun. It's such a good time to just get away sometimes and realize that there are people that are willing to do that kind of thing. That guy, my friend Sully, loves me so much. He's willing to drive 12 hours just to meet me in person for a couple of days. And that kind of thing is awesome. I just don't really think that would be possible without God. Because that doesn't seem like a human thing to do, if you know what I mean. So, Thurman, do you have a God moment for us today that you can talk about?
Yes. It just so happened that Chipotle, which is one of my favorite places to go.
Yeah.
That shout out to Chipotle. I was praying that. And I've been praying that I will live a life that's more pleasing to God, and that I will be able to help someone in some way or encourage someone in some way. And then just had a push myself and another officer at the podcast, And I was like, in my head, I was like, wow, Lord, that was really fast. That was really fast instead of that prayer. I just had that prayer and I've been thinking about it.
Praise God.
But I was, that was definitely a big God moment for me because it shows, it teaches me continually that God answers prayer and He hears us.
Yeah.
It wasn't prayer. It was just like, I was like, man, really like to be able to hear it's
Yeah.
God really hears and we're
Well, I think I helped cook that day. I'm going to take credit either way. No, that's a good moment though.
Yeah. What are they going to do? Stop you? I doubt it.
Praise God.
All right. So if you liked the show, please consider sharing it with a friend, sharing it with an enemy, sharing it with your cousins. And there are paid subscriptions you can use to support the show on Captivate, Apple Podcast, and Patreon for a little extra content. You can support us that way.
Yeah. Also consider checking out the Donna's Owl Podcast Network. A lot of good shows over there. Potentially some new shows coming over there. Some shows might be being recruited. Check it. Wait for more news on that. But there is going to be another new show. We're not recruiting somewhere else. That's going to be made specifically for the network. Will Rose is going to be doing. We'll laugh about that later. Where he's going to be talking to people about stories that weren't funny at the time, but now they look back and laugh about it. Now that it's later. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. But we hope you enjoyed the show. Next week, we're going to be joined by hopefully Sam Blackwell. We'll see what happens there. And to discuss how their faith impacts their life as a welder and machinist. And after that, Joshua's brother and sister-in-law, Matthew and Virginia Knoll, will join us to discuss their works as, hopefully, as logistics and fleet managers.
It's amazing how it's more difficult to get a hold of family than
Yeah.
pastors sometimes. Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And then Will's friend and science guy will be
Dr.
joining us.
Wesley
Finally.
Wallace. I got his name. I just forgot to put it in that line.
Oh, okay. Wesley Wallace. Dr. Wesley Wallace will be joining us. And at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be on the show.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
Once someone tells him. Yeah. Someone's got to write him
Hopefully
or
so.
something.
Yeah.
Make sure he gets the info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Music for this episode was provided by the Porter's Gate Collective. The intro, transition, and outro are all different parts of the song Day by Day. You can hear the full song on Apple Music, Spotify, or the Porter's Gate Collective website. Thank you for listening to the Whole Church Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, you can always sponsor our efforts to educate and unite the church on Captivate, Patreon, or Apple Podcast. If you're not into the subscription thing, again, you can leave a one-time tip on our Captivate website down below in the description notes. Thank you again, and please come back next week.